Kat Stamps of Stamps Communications, talking with Blake Ensign, owner of Blaze Communications. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate having me on the program.
Blake is a marketing strategist. He's detail-oriented, he has a knack for creativity and vision, and he works with business owners who typically don't have a marketing department, but they know they need to get on top of their marketing efforts.
Absolutely. It's very important that people realize that in every moment they're interacting with someone, they're marketing their practice, they're marketing the referrals, and they're marketing whether or not a person will hire them ever again or whether or not they'll produce a relationship for the long term. And that's something that people have to really think about, that in the first moment of interaction from that first referral, everything is on the line. And that's something that people need to get when they're talking to marketing strategists, as well as when they're promoting their own practices, that they are professionally representing themselves in a way that they can never take back. And that's really important in today's world because competition is fierce. There's lots of people who do what we do out there, and there's lots of men and women who are really hungry for the work, because everyone has to make a living today, because retirement isn't far off for most people in the middle stages of life. So that's what marketing is really about. Marketing is about promoting people, products, programs, and how people help one another to rise higher in life.
Wonderful. And understand you have a proprietary system for developing an action plan with your clients vis-a-vis marketing. What are some of the steps or phases you take people through?
Well, mainly we're talking about the spirit of one's company, because it's the person representing themselves in the moments of time that are essential to whether or not another individual is going to take enough interest in them to give them the time of day. The more time that a person invests in a personality of sorts who's communicating in a way that makes sense to that individual's soul, the more likely that person is going to be at buying into whatever that individual is selling, whether it be a program, whether it be a product, whether it be a presentation, whether it be something else altogether, like in an employment situation. But in reality, marketing is really about promoting others to higher ground. When we put ourselves as a lesser individual in that relationship, we gain more in the long run. You see, a lot of people try and put themselves first. Me is often what people do online. A lot of very famous people have billions of dollar budgets in order to do that sort of thing, like many marketing men and women we see promoting themselves across social media with full force of marketing budgets behind them. But for the smaller business practitioner, they only have moments in time to make a relationship. And that relationship is sort of the most important aspect of their life. So in my marketing planning situation, we are talking about 6 areas of specification that are really essential for a person to make a real business impact on their life as well as others. Now, it sort of sounds like I might be waxing on a little bit, but I am getting to the point. The reality is that marketing is a plan. And marketing is a plan that is implemented over time, but it's also implemented a quarter at least in advance, because you can't produce a work of art in a few minutes. Now, Picasso could, other painters can, but when it comes to the practice of a business, it takes months to prepare and months to put together a sales plan, because again, referrals begin in those first early stages of a relationship. Now, as for my program, I'm really selling something called the spirit of your company. So my program is sort of based on 6 concepts, but in reality, a person must totally measure their current marketing situation. In other words, how well is it really working? Is it providing for them a living? Is it providing for them a retirement? And is it providing for them the ability to be philanthropic in their life, to give back to a community group, an organization, or something that they're passionate about in terms of being able to use their spare time to promote something really important, like a podcast or investigating other types of spirituality or anything that really gets them excited in life. In the second area, we're talking about stabilizing or evaluating a client experience. In other words, determining what did and did not work in interacting with an individual that was referred or that came in through an online portal, because our online portals sell us and show us to be either good or great or indifferent or possibly bad at what we do. And that's the reality of marketing today with the internet and telephones and how people Google every little thing, or most people do at least. And then we get to shine. Shine is about creating your marketing messaging for attracting prospects and harvesting testimonials. When we're looking to harvest a testimonial, we have to be stellar in our performance. When we're talking about marketing messaging, we're talking about our mantras in life. not someone else's feelings about our mantras in life, but our mantras and what makes us tick, what we are passionate about, and what provides us the motivation to get up every day, to go to work, and to give our best ultimate services to people that are strangers possibly, or people that we've referred to a long time as strategic alliances. In other words, profitable partnerships that last a lifetime is what provides food on the tables of many homes in the land. Now, as far as standardization, we need to generate irresistible leads funnel and a systematized way of providing a story about the individual who is selling something and a sales process. You see, that's where most people fail completely. They don't have a sales process for bringing in leads, and they don't have a way to monitor their mouse in those situations. So they say all sorts of stupid things. They make it an emotional relationship when it's not exactly there yet in the beginning of a sales call, and they really get off on telling people no before they've really understood a person's full purpose in their journey in terms of what makes that individual tick, but more importantly, what is their purpose in business for even bothering to call them in the first place based off of some online or offline referral system. And that's where most companies fail. I can tell a little story right now, I think, that Kath sort of felt was good, and that is that when I was making inferential calls to a lot of companies in the area of advertising, marketing, and technology looking for a strategic alliance to produce a very important podcast for my life, I literally called 200 firms. Of those 200 firms, most of their technology made it like the individual calling should know absolutely who they're supposed to be talking to in that firm. Now, if a person is coming in off of social media or coming in off of a website, they might not actually have access to the individual's names, their professional titles, or their responsibilities within that firm. So when we only have technology answering the phone, we miss sales calls immediately because people tire of talking to computer systems. At the same time, receptionists fail because some of them act totally as gatekeepers, forgetting that the people who sell for their company are actually paying for their livelihoods. And that's where some of them fail. They want to protect the company's time, of course. They want to protect the executive's rights to say no to other people, absolutely. But in truth, when an executive is promoting himself or herself out in the community as a person to call in the case of a need of a service or provision of a product, it's really important that that person be available to those who call in specifically for them based on that referral. You see, we can't put off to a smaller, lesser man what is being promoted as us as the bigger man. But that's just a philosophy I have in life, that you never know who's going to be small today and who's going to be a megastar tomorrow. And my father, my late father, used to say, you can't piss on someone who's small right now because in a few months' time, in a few years' time, they might be rulers of the world and you'll never ever know it because you failed to see their potential. Now, when we move on to strategizing, we're really talking about discussing media and methodology, timing and frequency of online and offline marketing. When we're looking to sustain our companies and create a secure income for most of our people in our teams or that of our own lives and our own families, we must really look at planning, automation, and implementation of a new plan. And once we figured that out, we've got ourselves covered.
I want to go back just a second when you were talking about the way we treat people. What would be a way that somebody can maybe practice that? I mean, what's a practical way of implementing that and so that it does become such a second nature?
Well, in truth, we are all extremely busy preparing for our lives, but at the same time, we are very open to the reality that we are producing for other people. You see, we're not always producing for ourselves. A creative man like myself has tons of huge ideas that I could do with the company. But if the executive is not on board, if their mind is not open, if their ego is too involved in what they've created long ago on their own, they're not ready to move forward in life. And so the reality is, what I have learned to do, because I ran a couple different practices at one time. For example, I run a kanji camp Japanese language program in my community. It's been running for 15 years and it provided me a part-time hours of work and a full-time living. At the same time, I ran business strategy forums in my community, which happened every 2 weeks, where I had to do a presentation and where I brought in other speakers to share with us about their programs, people, and their products. On top of that, I was running a marketing firm, so I had many things going on in my office all the time. What I found easiest to do, because I had multiple phone lines, was to have a clipboard by the phone. And with that phone intake form, I could handle any call in the middle of anything. Something my Japanese wife of long ago remembered was that I was not a man who she should jump in and say, "It's dinner." because I could not decompress or disengage with what I was producing creatively that quickly. So I guess my point in that part of the story is that in reality, when we have a clipboard by the phone, we can disengage with what we're working on. We can produce a professional face because it's all laid out for us right there. How to get the information what we need in order to produce a good sale from the get-go and a good experience, and to provide the type of language and information that the caller is seeking. You see, we never know why a person's calling if we just say something like, well, tell me about what you want. That's not going to do it for any person who's really looking for a true partner for a long-term haul. The reasons that people fail in their business practices, the reason that they struggle to get more work, is often because procedures are not in place to help them to get the best experience from the beginning of that long-term relationship process. And that's what people fail to think. They think one-off sales or churn and burn methods is what a lot of salespeople talk about, where you get one client, you finish that client, then you got to go get the next. Not in my practice. In my practice, my clients usually stay with me for 4 to 6 years because they like what we do. They pay me monthly on retainer and they get it. Now, your question was about how do you produce a practice of that? Well, literally, you have to have a lot more calls. You have to do a lot more networking. You have to realize how important relationships truly are, the good, the bad, the ugly, because we learn from every single aspect of our failures as well as our successes in life. And that's something that a lot of professionals don't really talk a lot about because nobody wants to admit they made a mistake along the way. I certainly don't like to do that, but I've learned the hard way that unless you love people where they're at, unless you allow them to make their own failures, and unless you get it a little later on, like I've had many men who didn't implement a full plan that I prepared for them call me later and said, I wish I had done it your way. And that made me feel good because I couldn't understand why they try to produce an event in just a couple weeks when it really takes months to do something really wonderful. Now, what other questions do you have, Kat? I'm happy to answer anything you'd like to ask me.
When you're talking about procedures, do you find that there are widely varying differences or very close similarities among different businesses? Do you see what I'm trying to ask?
I'm sort of along the mindset that you're wondering whether or not a standardized process that I might produce in a proprietary program
one
like
size fits all, or how individualized it is.
Might work. Well, in general, a platform of a form can be adapted for any company. What's most important, though, is what the owner is trying to reach in terms of their service potential. In other words, I can produce an full-on marketing plan and do every single step along the way, every single creative task along the way, but mainly I'd prefer to bring in some strategic alliances like Gary Wallenhop and perhaps even you, Kat, who have other gifts and talents, maybe a little bit more practiced and proficient than I do. And that's how those planning processes work, is that we prepare for them an overall plan that fits most people. We do the research, we do the market research, we find out exactly who their competition is, what they're charging, how they're speaking so that they sound nothing like them. We create what the differentiating factors are for that business practitioner or that program that they're representing and selling, and then we figure out how to say it in a way that an executive, a man or woman of means and power and prestige, can make a quick decision whether or not they're going to pick up the phone and call. You see, that's where people fail. They try and make these cutesy little business cards that barely anyone can see of an age of real prestige in their company, and that's the first mistake. The second mistake is they put way too much information on their website that confuses the reader and the viewer as to what that particular practice is offering, and honoring no one in their online presence, because the reality is people make firms, not technology, and that's where people fail. They've got to show more of their sales. So I think I've gotten where you wanted to go with that question, but I'm open to any other questions you might have along those lines.
Right. I remember hearing when you try to market to everyone, you're actually marketing to no one.
That's absolutely true, Kat. You have to be very specific in what you're looking for. In other words, what is the man or woman that is your target market exactly? And the best way to figure that out is who is your happiest experiences for your own self in selling to someone. If there's someone who will talk to you about your goals and give you all kinds of free advice for a long period of time and then turns around and purchases it from you, that's kind of a happy experience because it's a win-win-win for both sides. It's a relationship under development, and it's one that can last a lifetime. But if it's a person who's just interested in making the sale and being done with that in relationship, they may not have a long-term practice unless they're really good at making short-term relationships with lots of people. And that's what we have to do, is we have to figure out what it is that we're longing to have our careers represent in the long term. And I talk a lot about the long term because retirement does not evade any of us. And old age does not either. When our eyes start to fail, when our minds start to go, when our ears start to be lessened. And that's the important part, is that we have to make a living during our prowess. And that's what a lot of people have sort of failed to get along the way. They're so busy living life, enjoying life, socking money into travel and all sorts of other experiences, perhaps in their free time or in their possessions, that they don't really set much away for those longer term aspects of living into old age. And I'm just a guy in my my mid years of life, if you will. I'm not going to give away my age entirely, but in truth, what you're really talking about is how do we make a life worth living? And that's one of my mantras, is that if I'm going to help someone, I'm going to give them my heart, my mind, my soul to their goals. I'm going to really think about what it is they're trying to accomplish. I'm going to really look at it from as many angles as I can think of. I'm going to practically decide whether or not their logo is making impact or not, or whether it makes them look like a small potatoes firm that no one wants to hire. I'm going to look at the language they're using to market themselves. Are they being clear and concise? For example, I just helped a blogging man totally change his entire taglines, and I was worried about how he would think about it, but he loved it because it was so clear and concise about what he's selling. And that's what people need to do, is they need to be very clear about what is it that they're selling to people, what services are they willing to offer them, and how long in life can they really produce off their own skill sets, or do they need to work with a team of sorts to make a larger living? And that's where people sort of fail. They really need to look at how can they help raise other people higher without so much as a worry about whether or not they'll be compensated. Sometimes in life they'll get nothing in return, but other times in life that loyalty that they've created in those individuals because of their gift of service, whether it's low pay or high pay, will last for a long time. And that's what we're really talking about in marketing. It's marketing relationships. Marketing relationships produce all kinds of long-term income, all types of retirement revenue, and openly wonderful experiences between people who are interacting in the business professional world.
That's it. Well, we know you have spoken directly to someone's heart and soul through this interview now. What is the best way they can connect with you and maybe start a process of working with you?
Simply pick up the phone and call me. My current professional line for both my practices at this time in my life is 317-348-0529. I'm happy to take a free consult with anyone who's looking at how they can improve their overall marketing campaign. Even if they have a marketing director in place, I might give them some ideas that they never thought of. That's happened a lot in my life, where I've been brought into larger companies that have some guy that they've been working with for years, but I gave them ideas because that man was a technology buff and not a creative mind. And there's a difference. The person who has the creative mind versus the person who has a technology mind are not the same type of people. And that's openly okay, because we can work hand in hand together really well. I really appreciate the fact that you took an interest in me today. That's all for me. Thanks for having me on your program.
Sounds wonderful. Spirit of your company with Blake Ensign. Thank you, Blake.
Thanks so much, Kat.